start the stream. Let us know when you're ready.
All right. Sorry, you'll let me know when you're...
Just give us 1 sec.
Okay.
And we're good to go, Mr. Chair.
All right. Good morning, everybody. My name is Councillor Paul Ainsley. I'm the chair of the General Government and Licensing Committee. The clerk has confirmed that we have quorum, so I'd like to call meeting number 21 to order. Welcome, everyone, and a special welcome to Councillor Mantas, the newest member of the General Government and Licensing Committee, to his first standing committee meeting. Today's meeting is being held by video conference. City staff are also connecting to the meeting by video conference. As City Hall remains closed, As City Hall remains closed, the public will continue to participate electronically and can watch the meetings streaming live on YouTube at youtube.com, Toronto City Council Live. The city's clerk staff have also connected all registered speakers to the meeting by audio. The list of speakers can be viewed online by visiting the General Government Licensing Committee's page at toronto.ca/council and clicking the speakers box for today's meeting. I'm asking for everyone's patience if we experience any delays or technical problems during the meeting. To the committee members, the city clerk has provided all of the agenda material on toronto.ca/council and on CMP, which is the clerk's meeting portal. City clerk's IT staff will be available to you remotely if you need any help with your electronic devices. I would also like to remind staff to keep their mics muted and their videos turned off unless they need to answer questions or speak to the committee. This will make it easier for me as the chair and for those watching on YouTube to observe the meeting. Members, please keep your mic muted unless you wish to question staff or speak to an item, and also ensure that your video is turned on. As part of each agenda item, I'll ask members to raise their hand or unmute their mic if they wish to to question staff or to speak. I'll then create a speakers list and we'll call on members when it's their turn to speak. When voting on an item or a motion, I ask that members ensure that they keep their video on as well and to raise their hand to indicate what their vote is. Members, I also want to remind you that you still must submit and approve your motions by email to staff. They're available at gglc@toronto.ca to help with any motions. If there are any visiting members of council attending the meeting today, I encourage them to turn on your video so I know you're present and can give you the opportunity to ask questions of staff or to speak on any given item. This is also going to assist the city clerk staff in recording attendance for the meeting. I would like to acknowledge that although we're in different locations and meeting remotely today, the committee would like to acknowledge that the land we're meeting on is the traditional territories of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty Number 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. At this point, I'm going to ask if there's any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. If there are, if they could please unmute yourself or raise your hand and let me know. Seeing none, can I have a motion to confirm the minutes of our last regular meeting on January 4th, 2021? Moved by Councillor Holiday. All in favor? Carried. Members, we will now proceed to review the items on the agenda, starting with GL 21.1. It is a timed hearing for 9:45. It is the cancellation, reduction, or refund of property taxes as of March 29th, 2021. It's a public hearing, so I will hold that down. Our next item, number 2, is our property tax exemption for Hot Docs International Documentary Festival and Hot Docs Ted Rogers Cinema at 504 Bloor Street West. Anyone like to hold that? Seeing none, can I have somebody move the recommendations in the motion? Councillor Matlow, all in favor? That carries. Number 3 is 900 Dufferin Street, Suite 219, designation of a portion of the property used by Toronto Employment and Social Services as a municipal capital facility. This is in Ward 9. Anybody like to hold this item? Can I have somebody move the recommendations? Councillor Holyday, all in favor? Carried. Number 4 is 20 Brunel Court, designation of a portion of the property used by the Bentway Conservancy as a municipal capital facility. This is located in Ward 10. Any holds? Can I have somebody move the recommendations? Councillor Matlow, all in favor? Carried. Number 5 is located at 189B Booth Avenue, designation of a portion of the property used by Woodgreen Red Door Family Shelter as a municipal capital facility. It's located in Ward 14. Somebody like to move the recommendations? Councillor Filion, all in favor? Carried. Number 6 is the Community Space Tenancy Lease Agreement and Municipal Capital Facility designation for Heritage York, located at 4066 Old Dundas Street in Ward 4. Somebody like to move the recommendations?
I have questions.
Councillor Nunziata has questions on number 6. I will hold that in her name. Number 7 is amendment to the lease agreement with the Shining Through Center for Children with Autism at 305 Greenfield Avenue, located in Ward 18. Councillor Filion's moving the recommendations. All in favor? Carried. Number 8 is an emergency non-competitive contract with OJCR Construction Limited to repair a section of the East Dawn sanitary trunk sewer located in Ward 17. Somebody like to move it's a receipt recommendation. Councillor Nunziata is moving receipt. All in favor? Carried. Number 9 is an emergency non-competitive contract with OGRCR Construction Limited to secure a 2,100 meter transmission water main in Ward 24. It's actually my ward. I'm going to move the recommendations. All in favor? Carried. Number 10 is expropriation of 480 Coxwell Avenue for stage 2 construction. This is located in Ward 14. Somebody like to move the recommendations? Councillor Filion, or sorry, Councillor Nunziata, all in favor? Carried. Number 11 is expropriation of a portion of 5795 Yonge Street for public street purposes, stage 2 in Ward 18. Councillor Filion's moving the recommendations. All in favor? Carried. Number 12, expropriation of property interests near the Christie subway station for the Easier Access Phase 3 project. This is located in Ward 11. Somebody like to move the recommendations? Councillor Matlow, all in favor? Carried. Number 13, expropriation of property interests near the Greenwood subway station for Easier Access Phase 3 project in Ward 14. Councillor Filion's moving the recommendations. All in favor? Carried. Number 14, 71 Merton Street, encroachment and construction access agreement located in Ward 12. Councillor Matlow is moving the recommendations. All in favor? Carried. Number 15, response to GL 20.6, licensing and enforcement of eating establishments.
Hold, please.
Councillor Filion is holding number 15. Number 16 is implementing online timesheets for council member staff. Somebody like to move the recommendations? Councillor Holyday is moving the recommendations in number 16. All in favor? Carried. Number 17 is leveraging provincial agreement to acquire Microsoft 365 cloud licenses, implementation, and support services.
Please.
Sorry,
Hold.
Councillor Filion, is that a hold?
Yeah, yes, please.
Okay, Councillor Filion is holding number 17. Sorry. Number 18, non-competitive contract with Integrated Distribution Systems Limited Partnership for proprietary original equipment manufacturer part. Councillor Holiday, would you like to move it?
No, I'm gonna, sorry, I lost sound there, but I would like to hold
Hold.
number 18.
Okay, Councillor Filion is holding number 18. Number 19, award of tender.
We can't hear you, Mr. Chair. We can't hear you.
Okay. Is that better now? Matthew, can you hear me? Yep. Okay. Thank you.
We can, yep.
Okay. Award of 19 is award of tender, Ariba document number 261767951118 for the construction of the new. Councillor Holiday is moving the recommendation number 19. All in favor? Carry 0880 and 47019407. Issue to Claims Pro LP for insurance adjustment services. Somebody like to move the recommendations? Councillor Holiday, all in favor? Carried. Number 21 is the award of request for proposal number 2688784453 to Claims Pro LP for the provision of insurance adjusting services. Councillor Matlow, would you like to move the recommendations? Councillor Matlow is moving the recommendations in number 21. All in favor? Carried. Number 2, amendment to non-competitive purchase order number 6050581 for the shoring of the existing roof structure of the Scarborough Gardens Arena located in Ward 20. I'll move the recommendations in that. All in favor? Carried. Number 23 is amendment to the non-competitive blanket contract number 470230068 with the Bionuclear Diagnostics Incorporated for the supply and delivery of various personal protective equipment.
Hold, please. Holiday.
Councillor Holiday is holding number 23. Number 24 is entitled Award of Negotiated Request for Proposal number 3405-20-0131 to Deloitte Incorporated for the provision of system integrator services for the financial systems transformation project. Can I have a mover of the recommendations? Councillor Nunziata, all in favor? Carried. Number 25 is contracts awarded under extended authority of the bid award panel. I have a mover of the recommendations. Councillor Holiday is moving the recommendations in number 25. All in favor? Carried. Number 26 is a procurement of emergency goods and services in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, August to December of 2020.
Please, Holiday.
Councillor Holiday, you're holding it? Councillor Holiday is holding number 26. Number 27 is Human Rights Office 2019 to 2020 Annual Report. Somebody like to move the recommendations? Councillor Nunziata is moving the recommendations of number 27. All in favor? Carried. Number 28 is Jobs and Future Development of the Board of Governors of Exhibition Place.
Please, Holiday.
Holiday, Councillor Holiday, sorry, is holding number 28. Number 29 is entitled Concrete Barriers at Union Station, which is an update report. I'll move the recommendations in that. All in favor? Carried. Number 30 is entitled the Kingston Road Incremental Growth Study Area. It's actually in my ward. I'll move the recommendations in that. All in favor? Carried. And that is our agenda. So we are at 10 to 10. So I am going to go back to the first item. Or we're all going back to the first item. So the first item is a timed public hearing for 9:45. It's the cancellation, reduction, or refund of property taxes as of March 29th, 2021 hearing. There are two registered speakers. The first speaker is Mr. Edward DeCola. Matthew, is Mr. DeCola on the line?
Hello, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. DeCola. Thank you for
Good morning. How are you?
being here.
How are you?
Not too bad. Thanks for being here with us this morning. You have 5 minutes to address the committee. At the end of the 5 minutes, staff can ask you questions. Members of the committee can ask you questions for up to 5 minutes each. Once that takes place, we can ask questions of staff, and then we would debate the item as a whole. So you have 5 minutes to begin whenever you're ready.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to everyone for considering my application for the reduction or expulsion of my taxes. And I'm also understanding, only recently I was informed that regardless of what I submit today, which is why I did not bring case law or anything else to waste more of your time, that the decision's already set. Is that correct?
Sorry, no, Mr. DeCola. So the committee has a decision to make on the item as a whole and any input that you give to the committee. So if you would like something changed or revised with regards to your property taxes, this is a public hearing, and that's what we're allowed to do.
Oh, I apologize because when I received misinformation, I was submitted much more information. I didn't want to take up too much of your valuable time. As I said, I appreciate that you consider my application. Unfortunately, I didn't prepare it because I understood Ms. Romano to state that the decision's already been made and that my submissions, although would be considered, don't change the decision. But I hear that you do have the authority to change such a decision then.
Yes, we do.
I'll make some. Oh, well, thank you. Thank you very much. Again, I thank you for accepting my submission. I am a single parent who's handicapped, as is my daughter. My property was destroyed by fire, which rendered it completely and totally unusable as of September 14th of 2019. As well as due to COVID, as well as extensive damage, it is still, even now, under restoration. My property is not just substantially unusable as described in the Act, it is totally unusable and was totally unusable all of that time. I believe that the Act called for a cancellation by property taxes under such rare and very difficult hardship conditions. I basically think that says it all. The Act is specifically structured for this, and anything else really falls short of the intention of what the Act does in offering relief, especially for people like my daughter and I. We are both handicapped. So not that should be only for handicapped people. That's not my intention at all. My intention is to state that we've lost everything. Our property burned down. It's being restored, but regardless, we only get what we had by insurance standard, which is very strict. That coupled with COVID made it very difficult, and it's still hard because COVID, obviously the pandemic takes precedence, and safety must come first for the workers. It's taken all of this time, and it's still nowhere near completed. Now, I'm expected to pay property tax on this, which is in itself a hardship because of what COVID has actually done, and because of my trade. It has been very difficult to even make money, as everyone's aware. Actually, I don't want to take up any more of your time. Those are really basically the facts. My interpretation of the Act, and it's rare the situation might be, is a total lack of use of our home, which we do not yet even have. And for that, I'm asking for the cancellation of the taxes. If you have authority to give me that, I would appreciate it. Those are my submissions. Thank you. Are there any questions?
Okay, thank you, Mr. DeCola. Are there any questions of the deputant? Councillor Holiday.
Yes, thank you, Mr. DeCola, for speaking to us. Could you give us your address?
I'm sorry. Good morning, Councillor Holiday. Pleasure speaking with you. My address is 31 Hurdle Avenue, Hertle, and it was the huge fire that was on the September 14th, 2019.
And what ward is that in? What ward is in that?
You know what? I don't even recall at this point. I'm sorry.
Which part of the city are you in, approximately?
I'm at Coxwell and Dundas area.
Approximately East York. Okay, I'm just going through the list. Do you know, is your property on the list that's before us in the report?
I was informed that it was, and I asked to speak to the matter if I could make any difference whatsoever. Yes, it's on the. It should be on the list. I've made two applications for a tax. Sorry.
And so, what is your ask of the committee? Is the amount wrong, or is there some disagreement on it? I'm not seeing it on the list, but that's also me scrolling through it.
Oh, I apologize. I was under the understanding that my application was accepted and considered, and I've actually received notification of how much a refund was considered, but it falls far short of my interpretation of the Act. My interpretation of the Act is that I'm sorry, I didn't interrupt. My interpretation of the Act is that if any situation, not just that we are handicapped, I mean, it's in every situation where you lose everything and you do not have, it's not just substantially, it's done, it's burned down. And I have absolutely no usage whatsoever of my property. In fact, it's an additional hardship. And I don't know if anyone in there has been dealing with insurance companies, especially in this pandemic. It is extremely difficult to get anything done, which makes it an additional hardship. But on top of that now, I'm expected to pay some property taxes on a property. It's completely unusable and still unusable to date. To answer your question,
I don't have any further questions, but I may just ask the staff for a little bit of detail. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Holiday. No, I think that's everybody, Mr. DeCola. We appreciate taking the time and effort to make your presentation this morning. Very sorry to hear about the fire at your residence. We will be asking questions. I think Councillor Holiday is going to take the lead on that, and we'll see what we can do for you this morning.
Thank you. Thank you. And by the way, again, let me reiterate, I know you're busy, and considering how difficult this pandemic's been for everyone, I assure you it has been a hardship I cannot even describe.
No, we understand completely. Thank you very much, Mr. Our next speaker.
Oh, thank you.
Yep. the clerk's Stanek. Ms. Stanek, are you on the line? Marika Stanek? Matthew, is she available or no? Okay, so you can't get hold of her, or she just hasn't logged in?
She received, we had sent her the information, but she's not logged into to this meeting at this time.
Okay, all right. So why don't we'll go to questions of staff and then we'll try her again in a bit. So we have questions of staff on this item. Councillor Holiday?
I will, thank you. I just managed to find the line item. It appears to be page 7 of 11 on Appendix A. Appears to be Ward 14, and it appears to reflect both tax years 2019 and 2020. And I wondered if staff could just explain to the committee how the figures were arrived at. I see 366 days were applied for in 2020 and 109 days were applied for, or at least reflected in this report, in 2019, and then there's associated values. And I take it our speaker today had some disagreement with the values, so maybe staff could talk to us about how those were arrived at.
It's Casey Brendan, and through you, Mr. Chair, can you hear me in the committee? Wonderful. Okay, and I will be able to respond to the questions. Councillor Holiday, you are absolutely correct in that the two applications are shown on Schedule Appendix A on page 7 of 11. There are two applications there, one for 2020 and one for 2019. This application, the grounds for the application, you will see is noted as reason code 14, the structure removed from the property. So this property was damaged by fire, and I believe the date was June the 14th. In 2019, it was damaged by fire, and so this application reflects the fact that following the fire, the property was unusable. So MPAC would have advised us of a reduced assessment value attributable to the damage caused by the fire, or in this case, the removal of the structure. And that information, the revised CVA reflecting essentially what is a land value, would have been reflected. This adjustment reflects this from the date the fire occurred, which is June 14th in 2019, and that's why it is shown there as 109 days, because it's 109 days from that date to the end of the year. And then for 2020, it was the full year of taxes that the reduced value applied to. So you've got 366 days in 2020. What the deputant spoke about, what Mr. De Nicola spoke about, his application that's here before committee is a result of the application for a reduction in taxes due to the removal of the property on the land. And that's what is contained in the staff recommendation in this report. If Mr. De Nicola believes that the taxes, 100% of the taxes should be removed, or that he is subject to either sickness or extreme poverty, there is an additional provision under this section of the City of Toronto Act that would allow for applicants to seek tax relief in the case of sickness or extreme poverty. Council has delegated authority to hear those applications to the Assessment Review Board. So if Mr. De Nicola wants to seek a reduction, a further reduction in taxes greater than what is being offered here today, he has the ability to appeal to the Assessment Review Board under this other provision for sickness or extreme poverty. I will turn it back over if you have additional questions.
Yes, if I may, Mr. Brendan, thank you. I just wanted to clarify. I think it's Ward 14, but the reason codes that I see on the report in 2019 is number 6, which is damage by fire. Yep. And then in number 2020, it's reason code 8, which is gross or manifest clerical error.
Correct.
And if there was a different reason code provided, let's say it was number 6, fire in 2020, or demolition number 5, would the value be different, or is that just that's for the purposes of our reporting?
No, in fact, the value that you see is a reduction to land value. Like MPAC made the determination that the structure was no longer usable, and basically they made their recommendation to us on the revised assessment to be used is a reflection of land value. So they've reduced it to what they feel is land value. They took the building right off to reflect the damage by fire, and the property was unusable. So basically it is a land value there. That's our understanding from MPAC. And so that's what we use in our determination of the tax reduction.
And so to round out the questions, is that typical? So if there's a fire in a property, we go to MPAC, we get the new value, and we apply that, and then it comes as an exception here to council for us to approve.
Yes, that's absolutely typical. And if you think about it, the building is removed, the value of the land as an asset doesn't go to zero. The fact that you can't use your property doesn't mean that there is no value to that land. You still have value in the land, and that's why the maximum reduction in this case would be to remove the land, remove the building value to land only. That's what was done in this case, and that is typical.
Thank you for your clarification.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Holiday. Other questioners of staff on this item? Seeing none. Speakers? Sorry, Councillor Filion. Questions of staff?
Yes, further question. I've run into a situation like this before, but presumably if there is no structure on the property, the city wouldn't allow someone to live on it. Like if somebody wanted to, I just find it an odd provision. So has this existed for a long time, that all we take into account is the value of the structure, which, as in a lot of parts of the city, even in Willowdale, the value of a property is pretty much in the land. But if your house burns down, you've got nowhere to live. It just seems like an odd way of approaching this problem.
Through you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Councillor Filion. The value determination, the city, in these circumstances, always look to MPAC to make a determination as to value. And so, the market value of the property is a combination of both the land and the building. And so we don't, and that of course will vary from neighborhood to neighborhood, but when we have applications like this, we send them to MPAC, we ask them to make a determination. This is what they've come back with, and this is what our tax cancellation is based on. And so, yes, the land value retains its value regardless of the structure and regardless of whether you can live there or not. The question is could you sell this property and obtain that much value as a vacant lot? I think that's the approach that MPAC takes.
Right, and the relief as far as somebody not having anywhere to live, that presumably would come from one's insurance company, and otherwise, in cases of extreme hardship, we have that the other panel that you're talking about. Is that how it works?
That's absolutely correct. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Fillion. Any other questions of staff on this item? Seeing none. Speakers? Is on this item?
I'm only speaking because no one else is. You know, I'm not sure what to do with this. It would have been, you know, it would be, I guess, more helpful to have a report in front of us and on this specific situation. I don't know what our options are. I have trouble going either way on this. You know, we have a way of dealing with it that the staff have dealt with. I don't know if we should be deferring this, and I'm not sure what to do with it. So I'm just speaking to fill in the gap here. I'm in case someone has more experience with this who has a better idea.
Mr. Chair. I think
Well,
the sound's not coming through.
Councillor Holyday?
Mr. Chair, perhaps we can defer to your guidance on this. I suppose we wouldn't want to hold up the whole report because of the refunds and so on, that of all the other places that are not contentious, but perhaps with your guidance, if this individual can work through their counselor, can this report be reopened or the matter reconsidered in the future if there's a finding that the numbers are different? You know, I don't want to hold it up for the balance of everyone else, but I understand the point of the residents. And you know, is there anything we can do to make things more comfortable?
May I make a point of order? Just perhaps.
Sorry, Councillor Matlow.
Yeah, to Councillor Fillion's point. I mean, the two things that I would want to understand, as I imagine all of us would, which is, does staff concur with the submission that we heard, and then also if they could provide some guidance as to, you know, what our options are, and you know, just any other sort of guidance that we would find helpful. And we just didn't do that when it was the opportunity to ask questions to staff. Perhaps, Mr. Chair, could we just step back one moment, go to staff, get their input, and then perhaps we'll be able to make an informed decision about what to do next?
Yep. Casey, could we get some input from you, or clarity, or Joe Ciccioli, or?
Thank you, Councillor and Mr. Chair. The advice from staff is the recommendation before the committee today. The options are: the committee can accept the staff recommendation, or the committee can withdraw this particular application for consideration at this time. We're not, we would be adjourning it to a future meeting. So yes, we could have another look at the facts and determine that we have made the calculation correctly. It may change the value of what is being recommended. So with the committee's approval, this can be added. There's already a motion to withdraw one of the applications on this list. This could be added, and it would come back to this committee at a subsequent meeting if that is the decision of the committee, or if the committee wants to accept the staff recommendation, the option is for the property owner to appeal to the Assessment Review Board. So if they actually want to argue values as to what is an appropriate land value, that would be something that we would refer to the Assessment Review Board. So that would see the committee adopting the staff recommendation here and putting the opportunity back to the property owner, Mr. DiNicola, to appeal to the Assessment Review Board. So those are your options. Accept or adjourn at this point.
Okay. Does anybody have any further questions of?
Yes, if we adjourn at this point, does that mean that the property owner doesn't get the relief that we are agreeing to?
Correct. Because it hasn't been decided yet, and so any tax relief that is due the owner would only happen once council has once committee has approved the staff recommendation. So yes, it would result in a delay.
Okay, it would result in a delay, but presumably wouldn't, the amount hasn't been paid, I'm assuming, right? So or has it? Have the taxes been paid?
I would have to confirm that. I'm not sure in this case.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions of staff? Councillor Matlow?
The submission that we heard from the gentleman at Coxwell and Dundas, do you have any information that conflicts with his submission? Do you concur with sort of the series of events that he explained about the fire? Just want to understand sort of what we know to be true and versus what we heard.
Through you, Mr. Chair, factually, the dates and the occurrence of the fire, we confirm based on known facts that were set out by the applicant in this case, and later confirmed by MPAC, that the property was in fact damaged by fire and is basically rendered unusable. But in those cases, as I said, what is typical is that the property value is reduced to land value, which is what was done here. What I heard Mr. DiNicola say is that he also would like the balance of taxes canceled, in part reflecting, financial hardship as a result. Yeah. And so if that is the case, the application itself, when the tax relief was applied for, it was because of the fire and the removal of the structure. If the reasons for wanting a greater tax reduction are different, then there is that method to go to the Assessment Review Board and have your case reviewed for the sickness and extreme poverty provisions.
Okay, so would that be the normal route rather than us relieving it at this hearing with respect to exceptional hardship that he's experienced, or not? I mean, or would it be for us to do that?
Sorry, in this case, council has delegated authority because council did not want to be making decisions on how much of a tax reduction should be received when somebody is arguing extreme poverty or they can't pay the property taxes. Council did not want to hear those individual cases directly and instead referred them as a policy to the Assessment Review Board. And the Assessment Review Board has a process in place to hear applications based on poverty or extreme hardship. And so that is the option. If you're now claiming two things, you're claiming your property was damaged by fire, that is addressed by the report in front of you. If you are also claiming that you can't make ends meet or that you're affected by poverty or sickness, that is a different sort of application with a different route.
I was just confused by some of the conversation earlier. So would the proper motion, if we wanted to support the request for consideration of relief is to accept the report today with a, what would it be, a referral or a, how would we ensure that this is considered by the Assessment Review Board for further relief?
The applicant will apply directly to the Assessment Review Board, citing, and we have an application form for this purpose, citing these provisions of the City of Toronto Act mentioning.
So we wouldn't be moving anything here to ensure that happens. That would be up to the applicant to apply.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
And the applicant's still listening to this conversation, so hopefully Mr. DiNicolo is taking it all in. Okay. Further questions on this item? Speakers on this item?
Mr. Chair, only very briefly that I would just make note that Mr. DiNicolo wasn't quite familiar with his ward. It appears to be ward number 14 as listed in the report. And I do believe that's Councillor Paula Fletcher. And the councillor's office, just generally speaking, councillor's offices may be helpful places to navigate these things as opposed to having to deal with it at the committee. So I would just encourage the resident to reach out to their local councillor and perhaps that councillor can help them with some of these processes that that we've talked about today.
Thank you, Councillor Holiday. Other speakers on this item?
I'll simply just add that the reason that it was so important to understand the process and the fairness of it, and to ensure that we really understand what we are considering and what we're not, is because like I think everyone here had so much empathy for their situation. It's just that if we, in an ad hoc way, start making decisions about every individual's property tax payments without going through an objective, fair system with real information in front of them, I think we're going to run into trouble. So I really appreciate Casey's advice, but it just wasn't clear at the beginning what we were even considering with respect to our options, and I'm glad that was cleared up.
Okay, thank you. Other speakers on this item? Can I get somebody to move the recommendations in the item? Councillor Nunziata, all in favor?
Mr. Chair? Sorry,
there's an amendment, isn't there, Matthew?
Yes, there is. Could you identify who would move the amendment, please?
There's an amendment on the screen. It's a technical amendment. Councillor Nunziata, can I ask you to move the amendment as well? Okay, Councillor Nunziata is moving the amendment. All in favor of the amendment? Carried. All in favor of the item as amended? Carried. Thank you. Thank you for Mr. DiNicolo for making your submission this morning and also helping us to bring some clarity to Councillor Fletcher as well. Our next item is number 6, Community Space Tenancy Lease Agreement and Municipal Capital Facility Designation for Heritage York at 4066 Old Dundas Street in Ward 4. Was held by Councillor Nunziata. Councillor Nunziata, do you have questions of staff?
Yes, just questions to staff. And the reason I held this down is that this heritage building was part of the former city of York when I was mayor, and I worked with Heritage York at the time, designating the building and as well helping them financially. So I just want to understand now, so their lease now, are they, so I understand the report, are they paying property tax or rent? Like what is their lease now? And we're recommending to exempt them from the property tax, correct? I just want
That's correct. So Councillor Nunziata, it's Sally Hahn from Economic Development and Culture, and we run the community space tenancy leases with the tenants. So the organization has been in overholding since we moved from the below market rent tenancy agreements to the CST agreements, and we're trying to go into the process of regularizing everything. So they've been consistently legacy tenants there since 1991, and as long as the property's been exempt it's run by EDC, we've put $500,000 of capital into it for state of good repair. So as long as it's been a city facility, it's been exempt. However, when we enter into a proper lease agreement with them, we're seeking municipal capital designation so they can continue to be a property tax exempt because they're a volunteer-led organization and they don't have a lot of operating dollars. So essentially what we're trying to do is maintain the status quo for the heritage organization and for the facility going forward.
Yeah, okay. You can hear me, right? Yeah, okay. I just wanted to make sure of that because this is a project that I was working on when we were the city of York, and the difficulties that they had, when we're in the city of York, we gave them a loan, and which they repaid. They were running bingos for years, and I know that, you know, they do a lot of wonderful work at Heritage York. So I just wanted to make sure that financially, that, you know, we're not putting them in a bind where they, yeah, I just wanted to make sure of that because, you know, I'm very close to this project. And so that's the only questions I had. So thank you for that. Okay. So I'll move the recommendation, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Nunziata. I'm sorry, Matthew, was there a technical amendment on this as well, or?
Yes, Mr. Chair, there is. We'll display that in just 1 second.
Okay, there is a technical amendment on the screen presented by staff. Councillor Nunziata, can I ask you to move that as well?
Yes.
Okay, Councillor Nunziata is moving the technical amendment that was on the screen. All in favor? Carried. Motion is amended. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Nunziata. Our next item is number 17, which is leveraging provincial agreement to acquire Microsoft 365 cloud licenses, implementation and support services, held by Councillor Filion. Councillor Filion, do you have questions?
Yes, I can do this one, but didn't you skip over number 15?
Oh, sorry, I did. My apologies. We will go back to number 15. Also held by Councillor Filion. Response to GL 20.6, licensing and enforcement of eating establishments. Councillor Filion, questions of staff?
Thank you. So what I take from the report is that under the current way of doing things, somebody could set up a restaurant without getting a license and could operate you know, indefinitely until somebody reports it or it is somehow noticed. There is no other way to catch it. Do I have that right?
Through the chair to the councillor, that's correct. It's incumbent upon the business owner to get the proper certifications, licenses, pay taxes, etc. Federally, provincially, and municipally. Correct. It's the responsibility of the business owner.
So is there, and I assume obviously that if a restaurant is then operating without a business license, there are no health inspections, for example, because public health wouldn't know that a restaurant existed there, or would they have some other mechanism for that?
That's probably best answered by public health.
Well, is there another mechanism? Because presumably if there's another mechanism for public health to know to inspect, that could also be a mechanism for us to know that the restaurant existed.
Correct. So there's a couple things, and that's where we need to work together, either building permits through Toronto Building or a health inspection, and to ensure that there's a process whereby it's referred if either of those two divisions noted that the proprietor didn't have a business license.
So I was going to ask about the building department. So typically, if someone is establishing a new restaurant, would they need a building permit or building department inspections or whatever from some interaction with the building department in order to get a place ready to open up?
Through the chair to Councillor Fillion, this is Toronto Building. So typically when someone does a change of use to an establishment or does construction that would require a permit, the owner or the property owner, it's incumbent on them to apply for a permit. And if we discover that they've done the work without a permit, we'd issue the appropriate orders.
Is there a mechanism whereby these two departments, being the building department and licensing, speak to each other so that we wouldn't have someone operating a restaurant for several years without a business license?
Through the speaker to Councillor Fillion, I think there's an opportunity for the divisions to work better together so that when those types of issues come up, that there is that communication that happens. And that's something both Carlton and myself have talked about.
Okay, but there currently is nothing. So somebody comes in. Can I ask about, Mr. Chair, can I ask about the restaurant that sort of prompted all of this, which was Adamson, operating without a business license for several years?
Yeah, so Councillor Fillion, just to reinforce, so there is currently legal action underway with a number of eating establishments in the city of Toronto. So if we could keep it to generalities without bringing forward any specific business.
Or we may need to go in camera. I don't know. It's hard to ask the questions. Like it's.
Yeah, that's the other option. We can go on camera as well. But anything in public, when it comes to a specific business establishment that has issues with the city before the court, we can't get into that specifically in public.
So is there anything, there's an obvious gap here in the city bureaucracy. Is there anything before us in the report before us that would fix that and report back?
I would say during the preparation of this report and following up on this file, we have strengthened the relationships and the referral process between Toronto Building, Toronto Fire, and Public Health. All four of us are working together, and so I think we've operationalized that moving forward. And I think that gap, while it's still incumbent upon the proprietor to get the appropriate licenses, we will now have the systems in place between Public Health, Toronto Fire, Toronto Building, and MLS to close that gap.
So a couple of more questions. The penalties for operating without a business license appear to be lenient in the extreme. And I just want to make sure I got that right. We would first draw to someone's attention they didn't have a business license, educate them about that, and if they apply for a business license, everything is good, and if not, they might get a small fine. Or did I misunderstand all of that?
No, you're correct. Normally, when we find out someone doesn't have a business license and we advise them of that, they apply right away. So We do have a process in place where we can escalate that. So first it would be educate, and then we would issue a fine. It's about $700, and failing to do that, we could continue to charge, and we have.
And would we educate because we think that people don't understand that they need to get a business license?
I think we again, through this process and working with Tabia and the Restaurant Association, a lot of the work we're doing on Cafe TO, it's all about promoting the need to have a business license. And then if you, again, we have when we do find establishments without a license, they comply the majority of the time.
Sure, but I didn't get an answer to my question, which is why we would be so lenient. Like I can see if we run into all sorts of cases where you have people who, for whatever reason, are new to the country, don't understand regulations, and they set up without a business license, that might be a reason for education and leniency. If you have people who have operated restaurants before, know how things are supposed to work and don't bother to get a business license, that's something different. So which of those two do you typically find?
That was your last question, Councillor.
Yeah, I think it's probably best for me to refer this one to legal, either Corey or Callie, if you want to address this one.
Hi, it's Callie Chapman from legal. Through you, Mr. Chair, I think generally what there is a progression depending on what enforcement generally sees. So in some cases, education is appropriate because there just isn't an understanding of what is required to open a food establishment. For example, as the councillor suggested, people coming from another country where it may not be regulated may not understand that there are several steps they have to go through. Another thing in the progression is that often enforcement will start with issuing a ticket, which is a lower level fine. I think it's indicated in the report that MLS is currently looking at the levels of fines and is going to be potentially bringing a report back to increase those fines, because there has been some comment that those fines are not reflective of what the costs of a license are, so that there may be some people who are incentivized not to get a license because the fine is less than the license. In addition, from there have been ongoing discussions that there will be a stepped process from enforcement to go from to summonses, which allow for much higher fines that are not limited, and also permit the prosecution's staff to seek a closure of a business who is reticent and is not doing what they should do.
Mr. Chair, I think I would like to go in camera on this to pursue some of this a bit further. And okay. I would like to speak, and likely we'll have a motion on so that we get a report back on how to deal with this issue effectively.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Fillion. There are other members of the committee that acknowledged that they wanted to ask questions, which I believe would be in public. Councillor Nunziata, followed by Councillor Holiday. Councillor Nunziata, and
yeah, thank you. So to Carlton, when somebody applies for a liquor license, which the city is notified, pardon? Can you hear me? Yeah, Carlton, when somebody applies for a liquor license, when they apply at the AGCO, of course, the AGCO requirement is that they have a business license, and then it's sent to the city. So at that point, we would know if somebody has a business license or not, because it does come to the city for clearance and as well to the councillor's office. Am I correct?
I believe so. I'm not sure it's a requirement to have a business license to get a liquor license. For example, you know, there are other businesses that we don't license that can apply for a liquor license. A shoe store could get a liquor license if they wanted, and we do not license shoe stores.
Yeah, but for a liquor license, aren't the requirements that you have to sell food?
Um,
That was my
typically-
understanding.
I'm not 100% sure on that.
Okay, because I think that they need to sell food. Maybe you can let me know on that one, Carl.
No, okay, so yeah, it is. It's a provincial regulation, so yeah, there's a requirement to sell food, correct?
Yes, to sell food, which would mean they need a business license. Now, when a business receives a business license, the requirement is that they display it, correct, in their business, that they have a license?
That's correct. Yeah, that's a requirement that it be displayed in a prominent location.
Yeah. Okay, that's it for my questions in public. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Nunziata. Councillor Holiday.
Thanks, Chair. I think my question is to Mr. Grant. I noticed online in the open data portal, we have all the business licenses listed. In fact, there's a fairly rich amount of information out there. It includes the category, the license number, the name, when it was issued, and then some further, details. I wondered if it was possible to get the ward number added to that list. I don't mean to make a motion or anything like that. Would there be anything holding you back from taking a look at that? Because that would be helpful. I wondered if you could offer comment on that.
No, I'm sure that's something that we could add to the open data file.
Okay. And then my second question, I remember like way back when people used to put a certificate up in their establishment that would be their business, kind of like proud, right? You'd have it by the cash register. This is my business license. Do people still do that?
Through the chair, yes, they do.
Is there a requirement for them to post the business license in a prominent location so people can see it?
Through the chair, yes, that's a requirement of the business and business licensing bylaw.
And then how does it work? Do we mail them a certificate? Do they download one? Is it every year that they put it up? This is my 2021 license. Yeah, or does it you get the license once and you don't renew it?
No, there's an annual renewal. We print them and we mail them annually upon payment.
Okay. And do we find generally people comply with that, or do we have a problem?
No, generally we find people comply. Those that do not renew, we send that to our enforcement team to make sure that they are not open and operating, and if they are closed because they are no longer viable, they're obviously not required to renew. But when they are required to renew and haven't, and they have missed payment, we send them a letter, and then we keep following up until they renew their license.
Is there any chance that we could add a line, the cards for the Dynsafe? Is there any chance we could add a line? Because I think you fill them out with magic marker. Could you write the business license number on those? Just as a matter of fact, if somebody wanted to go look something up, and it would be sort of like the checklist on the Dynsafe, right? That there's a business number, and in order to get that, they'd have to look at the certificate on the wall and make sure that it's also current.
Yeah, so again, that's more appropriately answered by public health, and my colleague Brian Thompson's on.
Okay.
Good morning. Through the chair, yes, Councillor, we could look at that. The part of the with the Dynsafe inspection that is completed by public health inspectors, on the inspection report, the inspector does write down the business license. Currently, you are correct. It's not included on the Dynsafe sign. And however, similar to which Carlton had indicated before, there's a number of food premises that aren't licensed by the City of Toronto, and so we could look at to see if there was a portion of the Dynsafe card that could have the license displayed. But it is something that is also checked during routine inspections by public health inspectors.
Okay, I mean, that's what I was really getting at, is that this is part of a checklist that you work on. And so do you have a handoff process if if there's a whoops, the certificate's out of date, or it's not being displayed up on the wall? We want to make sure that, I know it's not focused completely on public health, but I'd make the argument that a healthy establishment is one that is also in compliance with all the regulations, and ergo, they are following the rule to keep their license up to date, or having one to start with.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, to the councillor. Yes, Toronto Public Health does have a working relationship with MLS, where they provide us with new licenses that are coming on board. So we're notified of new restaurants to go out and to inspect, and vice versa. Toronto Public Health does refer those restaurants back that they identify as not having a license to MLS at the time of inspection.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Holiday. Councillor Matlow, questions of staff?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Answer this as best as you can, obviously, and let me know if you're not able to in public. And I know I'm asking you to sort of speak to a negative, but do we have a sense of how many businesses are in our city who currently are not compliant and don't have licenses? Is this a unique challenge with a small group of businesses, or do we believe that this is more of a widespread problem that needs that kind of attention?
Yeah, thank you for the question. This is we receive 750 complaints a year related to this. I would also note that we license 136,000 categories. And so that represents less than 0.5% of the total number of businesses. So you are correct. This is not a widespread problem. This is an issue that, again, it's incumbent, and most people, when they know the rules to follow them. That's not what happened in this case.
Thank you. And with respect to Councillor Fillion's comment earlier about the leniency of the repercussions, often that's a common complaint that we get from residents, whether it be noise bylaw or whatever. It's rarely do the consequences outweigh perhaps the risk that some people take to be scofflaws because they believe the gain is going to be worth rolling the dice. When we don't believe that we have the tools in our toolbox to be able to have a hammer when we need a hammer, do we go and make the requests, whether it be to council or to the province, wherever it's necessary to obtain those tools? Do we actively go and request them? And is there more that we need to do to ensure that we do?
So I'll start, and I would say the short answer is yes. The Part 3 summons that my colleague Callie Chapman spoke to, they can be quite significant, and it forces you to go to court. We, as a practice, with all our new policies and bylaws, are looking at increasing our set fines so that the penalties are appropriate and they are significant. So it is something that we are actively working on with our colleagues in legal, and we do apply for higher set fines where appropriate.
That inspired just perhaps a final question. Another challenge that I've witnessed, and I believe a lot of residents have witnessed when it comes to what you just described, is that often the timeline, the court proceedings, all that stuff that goes into finally getting them to do what they need to do means that they may operate for a long time serving unhealthy and unsafe things in between. Are there methods to shut them down while that's being considered if we believe that there is a risk to the public's health and safety?
So great question. You're right. It is a lengthy process, and with the courts, again, it is lengthy. So that's a fair point. There is a authority granted to me in the licensing bylaw to have a suspension for 14 days, but that's in extreme cases, and it's been used, 3 or 4 times between Tracy and I in the last 9 years. So it's very it's very rarely used. From a health and safety perspective, perhaps, I don't know if Brian wants to jump in on that.
Yes, through Mr. Chair, Councillor, with Toronto Public Health and the Food Premises Regulation and the Health Protection and Promotion Act, public health inspectors, when they're out in the field conducting the inspections at foods premises, part of their duties is to ensure that health hazards do not exist. If a health hazard does exist at that time, Toronto Public Health will close down under a Section 13 order the establishment until such time as that health hazard has been either eliminated or improved, right? In addition to that, in regards to any concerns with contaminated, adulterated food, food that may be unsafe due to temperature control, inspectors have the ability to immediately take action and have those food items disposed of immediately by the food premise operator, and then follow-up action would be taken in regards to that. So there would still be a court proceeding with those types of actions. However, the immediate action of issuing the Section 13 order with the closure or destruction of any food items is to alleviate that whole concern about the risk that's being posed at that establishment at that time.
Thank you, Brian and Carlson.
Thank you, Councillor Matlow. Sorry, I just wanted to ask, Carlton, you said earlier that there was new systems in place between the different departments. For
just responding, we kind of lost audio, so I'm not sure if you can hear me. I only heard the start of your question, but it was about the new systems, and it's through our case management and through referrals.
So you said earlier, Carlton, that you had new systems in place between the different departments to break down the silos, or what seems to be a lack of communication or communication issues. Could you elaborate on that?
So they're not necessarily lack of communication issues. There are referral processes. This has highlighted the need to strengthen those. We're implementing additional case management functionality to link the charges across multiple addresses, licenses, clients. I think the relationships with fire, public health, and Toronto Building have actually gotten stronger through COVID, and we've leveraged the learnings, and we'll be implementing enhancements with follow-up mechanisms for charges to ensure that we have compliance with when we have issued charges.
Because I guess the difficulty that I'm having, Carlton, and it's not just specific to Carlton, it's to building, planning, health, is having establishments like this. And there seems to be, Jim, there seems to be gaps that are causing this. And with all the electronic systems we have in place now, I'm surprised that, for example, health, that health goes into a restaurant, for example, or any type of business, and they get a green, they get a green certificate, but they don't see the business license. So right away, somebody health isn't communicating to licensing that, okay, you have an issue here with a business, or that, you can get a building permit for a restaurant, and the building doesn't seem to communicate to licensing that, we just issued a building permit for a restaurant at this location. And why somebody at licensing doesn't then make sure within a certain amount of time that that business is operating properly with the license. So I'm trying to understand how those barriers are going to get taken down and how they're going to be reported out.
Thank you for the question. So we share the same system with Toronto Buildings somewhat. So, but these electronic systems are old, and we are working on on new systems and new technology based on this. We're aware of these gaps, and so we're looking for the appropriate referral system, and we want it to be electronic and digital, not not pick up a phone. It needs to be immediate, and we need to have those ensure that all 4 of those groups are talking to each other when they need to be talking to each other.
Thank you. Those are my questions. Councillor Filion, you wanted to go in camera. Is the will of the committee to go into camera now, or did you want to leave it till the end of the meeting?
I think we should leave it till the end if that, although whatever you think, Mr. Chair, I'm easy either way.
May I opine on that? I
Yep.
just suggest, just in case there are other, and I'm not suggesting I've got any, but it just means just in case we've got any other in-camera matters with the upcoming items, it might be good to sort of collect those in a basket as we go along and then just do private in one session.
Yep, I'm fine with that. So we will hold number 15 down. Response to GL 20.6, licensing and enforcement of eating establishments. And we will go to our next item, which is number 17.
Mr. Chair, you might want to put your camera on, just close the camera right now. You might want to do that. Okay, that might help.
Okay. Councillor Filion, questions of staff on number 17?
Thanks. And I did get a briefing from staff on this, but we ran out of time. There was a few things that I wasn't clear on. So the main thing I'm still not clear on is how the leveraging the provincial agreement, what is it exactly that we are leveraging? Is it we get a better price, something else? I'm still not quite clear on how this is to our benefit.
Yes, thank you for the question, Councillor. Through the chair, we're actually leveraging the agreement that has the government pricing through the provincial agreement. So the benefit is that we get a government pricing that's been negotiated in that respect. That's one component. We're also leveraging the contractual in terms of, because the province has a broader public sector contract, so that's another component we leverage. So the government standard pricing we leverage, as well as the contractual vehicle that the province has gone through the process for this vendor.
So does that mean we get the same price, for example, as the government of Ontario?
Through the chair, yes, we get a standard pricing that the province has utilized through the process, yes.
Okay, because during the briefing, I said, do we know what the price is that either other municipalities or the province are paying? And I thought the answer I got back was, no, we don't.
Through the chair, it's the actual government pricing that we leverage. So apologies if that seemed confusing one-on-one, but we definitely leverage, and that's the advantage of using the broader public sector contract in this case.
Sure. Again, I'm having trouble understanding what leverage means. So do we know how much the province is paying for the same product, and how much other municipalities are paying for the same product, and is it all the same price, or is there something that is still negotiated?
We through the chair, we know the pricing that is offered to the government in terms of various government, and then through that period, we then have an opportunity to negotiate further as required based on how we walk through that component. So we do know essentially what that pricing is for the government. We do know that.
And I'm still not clear. So does that mean there is a price that we know the price that other municipalities are paying, but we still have an opportunity to try to get a better price? I'm still not understanding.
The answer to the chair, the answer to your question is yes. We know essentially what the vendor is offering, and we have an opportunity to ensure that we maximize that pricing for the City of Toronto, to ensure that we maximize, because essentially it's about the large component in terms of how many licenses that we're looking to get. So we definitely know that information, and we utilize that information through the negotiation period to ensure we're getting value for the City of Toronto.
So, for example, if we're getting 10,000 licenses and the, you know, whatever the price is, we know we know how much the province of Ontario would be paying, or how much Ottawa or whomever would be paying for the same 10,000 licenses. Is that correct?
Through the chair, the way the actual licenses walk out in terms of there is per that particular user. So it's a standard government rate, and that government rate is offered to government entities. So through that government rate, we know that. And then through that rate, the City of Toronto ensures that through our negotiation process, we are maximizing to ensure that that rate is even better or is required for the City of Toronto.
So just tell me if I've got it right now. We're given a government rate, but that isn't necessarily the rate that other governments have paid. Is that correct?
Through the chair, we're given a government rate, and we know that in the fact of we want to ensure that rate is ensuring that it is negotiated in the City of Toronto. So part of that is that we're walking on that rate. We have a rate, and we walk through that rate. So that's the way that we negotiate and the way the negotiations has been. In maximizing, we obviously, of course, want to maximize the value in terms of making sure that we are in line with other governments and we're getting the maximum rate.
And I still don't understand. Maybe we'll go to someone else, Mr. Chair, and I'll try again if I still don't get it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Filion. Other questions of staff on this item? Is everybody hearing me okay? Yep, okay. Other questions of staff on this item? Sorry, Councillor Holiday.
Chair? Yep. Chair, I wonder through you, to the, I think the Chief Technology Officer, can you just tell me, essentially this is the conversion of, at the desktop level, users to a cloud-based solution, right? We have, I can't lift it that well, but you know, I got a laptop here in front of me. It's got Microsoft on it. The software is installed onto my laptop. It's kind of the traditional way. But the proposal here is to move this into a cloud-based system so that I use the internet to access the software, and very specifically the email. Is that correct? Is that the basic concept of what this proposal is?
Through the chair, that is correct.
Okay, so is there anything that compels us to activate everybody all at once in 5 years and 10 years, so we can begin to choose people in the organization and say, you're not going to use the old system anymore, you're going to go to this cloud-based one. And, you know, we can start with one person, 500, 1,000 the first year, whatever we want, because we're going to have a price that you're going to negotiate to do that. Is that correct?
Through the chair, that is correct. And part of the proposal is what we've specified with in the first year in terms of the amount of users that we're hoping to convert based on that approach. So you're correct, through the chair.
And if we don't like what we see, can we go back the other way and say, like, this is just not working?
Yeah, so through the chair, and certainly legal are on the phone, there are within the legal entity, there is ways that whereby we can sort of terminate or stop that if we choose that from a city standpoint, it's not providing that. So that's correct.
But it's subscription based. So, you know, I mean, I suppose we could terminate contracts, but we could also just say, you know, the year's up, we're not going back the other way, and just not, you know, turn the ship back the other way and go back to the traditional model. I mean, that's all doable. And that's basically the path before us. You're proposing that we change our technology, and here's the price, here's the agreement. But, you know, if the world changes or you're not happy with what you see, we can easily just turn people back
Yes, through the chair, the contract does have provisions for termination with notice period that's provided, of course. Obviously, we do want to modernize the city, and it's critical in terms of us moving this way to ensure that we are not continue to invest in old technology, but there are provisions in place to ensure that we can terminate that with notice to the vendor.
And finally, how many people are already on the system? I'm pretty sure you tried this out.
Yes. Yeah, sorry. Through the chair, we had a pilot that started with 500 users on in the city, and some of those 500 users would be moving on to there. So we did try it out for a number of years through the authority that was given through council.
And is this technology similar to the one that I can buy? I can go online and I can order Microsoft, personally. I'm not saying I pay the same as the city, but I could do similar stuff.
I'm through the chair, so this is commercial, and yes, it's not an apples to apples comparison. Based on the size of the enterprise we are and the commercial, there are some very improved, enhanced features. So if you definitely went to buy it from your home use or you bought it for your business utilization, some of the enhanced features would not be included in this commercial because we're a large entity and we're trying to ensure that we have some enhancements to that.
Right, we're buying a little more actually, and so maybe my last piece, just conceptually. So right now, pick our email. I mean, the email is the big piece of this. We run email servers. We buy software, presumably from Microsoft because it's Outlook. You have staff that looks after servers, and they back up that stuff, and they're probably physical boxes. The proposal here is that all of this stuff goes over to Microsoft into the cloud, and they run it all. And we subscribe to the service of running the email, and they look after the backups, and they look after all the security and all the things that need to be done to run the system. And it's essentially over the internet that we will get our mail.
Through the chair, that is correct. We shift the risk so that we can focus on higher value. We do have equipment or infrastructure that we service now, which obviously is very time consuming and takes time. So the idea of this, which is similar to other government entities in terms of the provincial, the federal government and other municipalities, is that we're shifting that approach over to the vendor so that we can actually focus on other high value initiatives for the city.
Did you price out the shifting of the risk?
We have looked through the chair. We have looked in terms of productivity savings, of what it would give us, and that's highlighted. We've looked at in terms of what some of the cost avoidance would be in terms of keeping the old area. So that has also been factored into the overall financial return on investment.
No, but I mean the actual security, right? So we have to, and maybe it's not easy to do, but if there's a security focus on maintaining our servers, there's effort to do that, and then of course if there's ever a loss or a breach, that has cost too. Did you tally up a guess on what that could be, or is that just an additional benefit that has been left unpriced?
That's actually factored as part of the pricing in that respect. So yes, through the chair, it's been factored. And the benefits have been factored in terms of the enhancement from those aspects as well.
Thank you, Councillor Holiday. Other questions of staff on this item?
I'm just going to try my question one more time. And then
sorry, Councillor Fillion. I just want to check in with Councillor Nunziata and Councillor Matlow first before we give a second round. Nothing from either one of them. Okay. Councillor Fillion.
Yes, and if I still don't get it, I'll do it offline. Everyone else seems to be fine with understanding the pricing. But so before we sign a contract, will the city be able to know that we are not paying, that our price is as good or better than what the province of Ontario has paid for the same product?
Through the chair, yes, before we sign a contract, we would be able to ensure that we are making sure that we're getting the rate that shows to that. That's definitely something that we would be ensuring through before we sign any contract.
Sure, but again, that's not the question. The question is, will we know that not some rate that's quoted, will we know that our price is as good or better than what the province of Ontario is actually paying? I'm talking about the difference between what you actually pay versus some kind of standard quoted price, because there seems to be potentially a difference between those two.
Yeah, so through the chair, we actually have a range based on what each of the, what we submit. We are always in touch with the province in terms of working with them in that collaboratively way. So we have a range, and we know based on the certain features we're asking for our base to ensure that we are in line in making sure we're maximizing that, yes.
Okay, perhaps someone can help me with this between now and council offline. I don't want to prolong the meeting for something that everyone else seems to understand that I'm having trouble with.
So Councillor Filion, it's Josie, if I may, and we will come back to you for sure. We definitely know that we have gotten, there's a baseline price that they got from Microsoft, the province did, and we know that we actually, with discounts, we got a good price, lower than that based on the features we received, but the team will come back to you with the specifics before council.
Thank you.
So, Ms. Cioli, when you say that, it's fair to say, or I guess in layman's terms, you could say that there's a baseline price from the provincial government, and then we decide what features we want added onto that baseline price, correct? Is that the way I'm understanding it?
And through the to you, Chair, and I'll let Lawrence answer. The answer is correct because there's many features that are part of the negotiation, but we start with the baseline. But I'll let Lawrence comment to that. Your question is correct. What you're asking, Lawrence, if you want to add.
Through the chair, there is the baseline that it sets, and then the features that are added across, those are individually priced out in terms of those features. And then depending on the city's use to ensure some of the things to ensure that we comply, we get enhancement, each of those individual prices are what is included. And then that goes in through part of the fact of making sure we're negotiating down to get the best rate.
Okay. So is it fair to say, Lawrence, and when we talk about Office 365, and you know my favorite expression is always dragging the city of Toronto kicking and screaming into the 21st century. And so if we don't have Office 365, we're not dragging the city into the 21st century. We're going to leave, I would think we're going to leave it back in the 20th century, correct?
Through the chair, that is correct. And also if we don't do this, it's going to be very difficult to meet in terms of the aspirations in some of the areas of modern TO.
And I think, Lawrence, when we talk about, you just said, aspirations of modern TO, and we just dealt with an item at its very basic level around licensing of eating establishments and restaurants. We need modern TO to achieve what we're asking staff to do and what staff are committing to do. And I think that's just one example of many countless examples of what we would need Office 365 for. Is that not correct?
Through the chair, that is correct. And as we look into a hybrid walk, whereby some people will be working from home and some people, obviously, as we look to the return back to the office, the tools in there, Office 365 is a key essential tool. And if you look at the other areas in terms of other public sector, the fact that Toronto is still in this position limits our ability to ensure that we can, as you said, really modernize and make sure that we can achieve some of the other aspects that are required. So in terms of your statement, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, and I wholeheartedly agree with that because I've had comments from staff. They know I'm looking after general government and IT, and they've talked with me about, colleagues they know at the provincial level and what they can do. And they complain, why can't we do this at the city? And I have to explain, well, we don't have Office 365.
So if I may add, it's Councillor Ainslie, Chair. This tool, this specific requirement is critical for the collaboration we need to move into the modern TO office modernization stuff we do. If we do not have this, we will be compromised, not be able to do some of the stuff that staff need to do. Plus, there's 10,000 staff that do not have access to to email today. That this is an equity discussion. Not all our staff get it. The other thing I just wanted to comment what Deputy Mayor Holliday said. The cybersecurity discussion here is we are obviously adding this as a requirement in the cost structure, but I think we'll also get future benefits because of today, the criticality of cyber and the digitization that's going on. This becomes a critical benefit too, that we may have not been able to actually quantify it in the degree that you may have wanted, Deputy Mayor, but it's an important one to state.
Okay, thanks, Ms. Scioli. And Lawrence, can you just comment a bit about, so we're rolling it out with 10,000 licenses, as Ms. Scioli just mentioned, and we're doing it in phases. Could you just elaborate on that a bit?
Yes, through the chair. So the first year we're focused on 10,000, and those areas will be focused on meeting certain components to improve the equity standpoint. There's actually about 10,000 casual and part-time and seasonal workers who don't have access in terms of our environment right now. And then essentially we're going to move through in terms of other groups to maximize. So it's a phased approach. We've taken a lot of lessons. The province, based on their size, took 3 years to do this. It's a large and complicated transition, and we want to make sure we do it right. So the first year is 10,000. We have a total of 37,000 in terms of that we have to roll it out, and we will move through that on those different phases.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Councillor Matlow, did I see your hand up? Councillor Matlow, questions of staff?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if you would indulge me, I'd really like to use this opportunity while Microsoft is a word on this item to use it as an excuse to ask for a related question that we just haven't had an opportunity at this committee to just get the answer for. And I think a number of us want to know the answer. Every time I use WebEx, and I think Councillor Nunziata and others have expressed certain similar frustrations with different groups and different organizations and people, they're like, why are you using WebEx? And I don't know how to use WebEx, and it's not as good as everything that everybody else is using. And I understand that we didn't want to use Zoom because of the privacy concerns, security concerns, but a lot of people are like really excited about Teams. And I just wonder, like, when everybody else pivoted to almost everything other than WebEx, why did we go there? And are we satisfied with that? And are we entertaining Teams for another option?
Yeah, through the chair, it's a great question, Councillor Matlow. So part of this component also will have Microsoft Teams that comes into it. And if you look at organizations, Josie and I were discussing with other organizations, a lot of organizations have multiple web conferencing solutions. So in terms of WebEx, WebEx is very strong to integrate with hardware. In terms of that's their strength, it's utilized in certain large groups. Microsoft Teams has a way also of being utilized internally in terms of improved collaboration. So because we didn't have this platform in terms of the Office 365, and we'd only done it with 500 pilots, and based on the fact of moving this organization to remote work, we wanted to be prudent. So by going to this, if we gain the authority to move forward, it gives the City of Toronto a choice to look at what is the right video conferencing to use to deliver in that respect. The existing on-premise solution would have made it very difficult for us to basically move. So just from a high level, that's really the way that we had to factor in terms of those decisions of why we chose one to the other at that time.
I'm glad my question wasn't actually that much of a departure from the item in that case. May I, so do you have any sense of a timeline? Let's say we approve it today, everything's good at council. When would we have access to Teams?
Through the chair, if it's okay, I would like to follow back on that. My colleagues are on the call, Renee Laforet's on here, the Deputy Chief Technology Officer. I think we want to just come back and then provide that. We can certainly come to you and provide that feedback. I certainly don't want to make a commitment of a time here. There's a lot of back-end technical things that we have to get ready for, and we also need the assistance of Microsoft to make sure we're doing it right and learning from other jurisdictions. So if it's okay, I would ask that we could come back and maybe reach out to your office to provide the feedback on that.
I imagine my colleagues would be curious as well, so thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Matlow. I see no further questions of staff on this item. Speakers on this item? Councillor Nunziata?
I'll just move the recommendation.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Nunziata. Councillor Nunziata is moving the recommendations. All in favor? That's carried. And then, sorry, from the clerks, on item number 1, sorry, Matthew, do I understand that the second deputant is on the line?
Yes, Mr. Chair. We have Marika on the line now. If the committee does want to hear from her, she was not present earlier. You would just need to reopen the item, and just to note that your previous decision on the item still stands if you do reopen it.
Okay, is that okay with the will of the committee? We can reopen the first one for the deputant. Okay, all in favor of reopening item number 1? Carried. So Matthew, we're going back to item number 1.
Yes, and we will just wait to hear in 1 second if the deputant is available. And Mr. Chair, and to the deputant Marika, you will need to connect your mic.
Good morning, Ms. Stanek.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you for allowing.
I'm sorry, and just to clarify, Ms. Stanek, you have 5 minutes to speak to the committee, and
Thanks.
Members of the committee can ask you questions for up to 5 minutes after that. So you can start whenever you're ready.
Thank you very much. I don't think I need 5 minutes, but I did want to ask the committee to request that you review my property tax situation. I did send some notes because I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to make it due to a medical appointment, but I live at 8 Lothian, and this was a new build. The house was under construction for 2 years, and I continued to pay the property taxes. When the reassessment people came around, they're the ones who advised me that there is a clause that allows a person during the period that a property is deemed inhabitable, and obviously this was a construction site, that property taxes can be not exempted, but just, I guess, exempted for that period that you can't live at the property. So I went to Etobicoke City Hall, filled out forms, the special forms that were given to me to cover the 3 years during which the property was under construction. And then I received a letter, 2 letters indicating that 2017 and 2018 were denied and that 2019 was going to be referred to this hearing. So I guess my question is, can you please reconsider that? Because I think it's very unfair. And I know I was pointed to the fine print by the city staff, and it was literally days before this whole pandemic, just literally days before we went into a lockdown last February. I think I made it to the city hall just in time to get those forms signed off and filed. And then everything shut down. And then months and months later, I thought I'd make an inquiry, and then I got those letters. So number one, I think it's really unfair. If this is, a policy or a protocol, then due to the circumstances, I ask you to reconsider, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Stanek. Questions of the deputant? Councillor Holiday, questions?
Yep, thank you for speaking to us. Just to understand a little bit more, so when did you move into the property?
In April of 2019. Construction started in May of 2017. So it was demolished, yeah.
And when did you start owning it? Like when did you said you bought, I think you said you bought it like new,
no,
or have you been there all the time?
No, actually I inherited it.
You inherited it. And when did you inherit it?
When my dad passed away. I actually purchased it from the estate, would be more accurate.
Okay, but yeah. In 2017?
No, it was around 2010 or so.
Okay, so you owned the property since 2010, and then in 2017, it sounds like you wanted to renovate.
Yes, we always knew that we were going to do it. Yeah.
I see. Okay. And did you hire an architect or any professionals through that?
I mean, all my city permits are filed. In fact, the permit was just closed off about 2 months ago, the final inspection.
Okay.
I have his card here, his name, but like I said,
that's okay.
We just
That's
received the closure probably 2-3 months ago for the final inspection.
And so if I understand the issue is you want to be able to go back to prior years. You got your application and you got your application in on time with respect to 2019, 2020, and that's what's before us, and that's all good.
2017, 18, and 19, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
It was partially, I had to do it under I had to do it under 3 forms because the construction period actually fell within those 3 years.
Well, I know, I understand.
2017, yeah.
But essentially you didn't know, like you just didn't know that you had the option available to you.
I had no idea until the MPAC assessor, and by the way, as an aside, the property taxes here have skyrocketed, and I don't think we're going to be able to stay in this house because of the cost of property taxes now, but that's a different issue. But the assessor said to me, well, you can do this. And I said, why? I've been to City Hall paying for permits, and we probably were there 20 times and nobody ever said anything. Ever, not a word. Until I went back and said, geez, I just found out from this MPAC assessor that this should be done. So I guess, maybe the city has to be a little bit more clear. Like, when a property is demolished and the city permit is issued, maybe property taxes could be automatically put on hold, right? While the property is uninhabitable.
Thank you. I'm going to ask the staff in my questioning just to respond to how our system works and with respect to going back in time on this stuff. But thank you for talking to us today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Holiday. Other questions of the deputant? Seeing none, thank you very much, Ms. Stanek. We're going to bring this into what we call bringing it into committee, where we can ask questions of staff on your file. The clerk will turn off your microphone and you are free to listen to the conversations.
Thank you. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for making time for deputing this morning. Questions of staff. Councillor Holiday?
Perhaps I'll just start to just make sure that Mr. Brendan's available, because we did close the item. And so he may have headed off to his next commitment.
I am here, Mr. Chair, and ready for questions.
Excellent. Okay, so hopefully you heard the exchange. I wondered if you could elaborate on our rules about going backwards, back in time on assessments, given the missed opportunity that the speaker brought forward.
So I through you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your question, Deputy Mayor Holiday. The facts of this matter is that, in fact, there was an application to reduce the value of this property as a result of the demolition of the property. And the demolition you heard started in May 2017. MPAC was in receipt of an application identifying that this demolition had occurred. They inspected the property, and the property was, in fact, reduced to land value for 2018. And so that was a previous application that was heard, a similar application to this process that was heard by general government in the past, that reduced the land value to reduce the property's value to land value only. And the application that is here before you pertains to the 2019 taxation year, and the stated reason is that MPAC erred in its return of the assessment roll, MPAC confirmed, no, in fact, the value that's returned for 2019, the year in question now before the committee, does in fact reflect land value. MPAC confirmed no error was made on their part, and therefore there's a 0 recommended as the tax reduction in this case. I will say that the committee has the ability to adjourn this application, to send all the information back to MPAC for a review of the facts and the timing and the values that were returned. If that is the committee's wish, we'll simply adjourn this item. It'll go back to MPAC for a confirmation of all those facts. I can't hear.
Right, Councillor Holiday, your microphone's off.
Right.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I just don't have the appendix open in front of me to get to the line item, but is the adjustments $0 in 2019 and 2020? Is that the recommendation before us?
It is on Appendix 1 at the very bottom of page 1. And the recommended reduction is $0 for the 2019 taxation year. That is the application that's before us. There's nothing.
Okay, so there's no 20. There's nothing here for 2020.
No, because
okay,
in 2020, the value would have increased because of the new building that was put up.
So given the additional information, is it your recommendation that we stick to the staff report, or that we adjourn this because there's something to take a closer look at?
In this case, where the claim is that MPAC made a gross and manifest error, MPAC has to confirm that they've made an error. And in this case, MPAC has confirmed that they did not make an error, that the value that was returned for 2019 was the correct value. That is the value of the property reflecting a land value only. So MPAC has confirmed they believe that was the correct value. They're not confirming that they made an error. So that would be the staff recommendation as well.
Okay, so based on the data that you've got, the recommendation is that that we continue with the report as written, because that's the information from MPAC. What could the resident do? Could she go back to MPAC and challenge them further with respect to, I mean, everything, 2017, 2018, 2019?
Yes, in this case, the applicant, if the applicant does not agree with the decision made by committee here today, also has the right to have this heard, make an appeal to the Assessment and Review Board to review all of the facts in this case. So if
okay.
the staff recommendation, if the applicant does not agree with the staff recommendation and the committee decision here today, the option is to go to the Assessment and Review Board and further appeal it.
But essentially the recommendation that you've placed before us is contingent on the recommendation of MPAC. In other words, the committee or staff don't kind of make up numbers in this report. You take the data from MPAC, they have their process to arrive at that data, they have their process to confirm that they got it right, and then you compute what it is that needs to be computed. In this case, it's $0.
That's absolutely correct.
Okay. Thank you. That's helpful. And hopefully the speaker is still listening and she's heard a little bit about the explanation about where she can go next with any outstanding concerns. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Holiday. Other questions of staff on this item? Seeing none. Speakers on this item?
Perhaps, Mr. Chair, I would just offer comment that hopefully some of the questions I was able to ask staff gives our speaker today an opportunity to do what she needs to do next with her outstanding concerns. But based on the advice I got from staff, I think we have to base the committee's decision on the connecting of the dots of the various pieces of information. And the staff have given me assurance that they've asked the correct questions of MPAC and MPAC has returned the results. my suspicion is that perhaps the resident has some disagreement with respect to what MPAC did, but we're not here today to evaluate MPAC's information. We've got to go with what we've got. And there appears to be some other forums where the resident can take her concerns, including the review board. So, Mr. Speaker, hopefully this is a helpful thing to our speaker today. And I guess we should move forward with this.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Holiday. Other speakers on this item? Mr. Green, how do we need a motion just for receipt, or how do I close this one off?
Mr. Chair, you can take a vote item as amended, and that will include the work that you've done already, which is to that preserves the motion that you've done already earlier in the meeting.
Okay, so I'm moving the motion as amended on this item. Item as amended. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. We are going to our next item, which is number 18. Non-competitive contract with the Integrated Distribution Systems Limited Partnership for proprietary original equipment, manufacturer parts, and services for Allison transmission and Heister forklifts, held by Councillor Fillion. Councillor Fillion, number 18. Questions to staff?
Yes, thank you. So again, just making sure I understand, we entered into a contract with the company to buy a product, and then if we want that serviced, there is only one company that is able to do that. Do I have that right?
Through you, Mr. Chair, partially. So Allison transmissions can actually come in a number of different makes of vehicles, so Mack, International, General Motors, and so forth. And the exclusive dealer for the warranty and service provisions on Allison transmissions is the one identified in the report.
Okay, so when we, and this is no comment on these companies. I know absolutely nothing about the companies. It's kind of how we would get ourselves in this position. So, so if we want these products serviced, we always have to do a non-competitive contract. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's correct.
And did we know that at the time we purchased the product?
Again, through you, Mr. Chair, as you'd see in 2017, we actually did a competitive call for it, and we've discovered that there is only one authorized dealer in the province of Ontario for those things.
Did we discover that in 2017, or did we just discover it now?
It's been since 2017.
So then I guess it's a process question. How could this happen when we purchase something that we know is going to need to be serviced? How could we not look into that before purchasing the product?
Through Mr. Chair, I'm not sure there's anything we could do about it. So to explain, if we're purchasing a garbage truck, a Mack garbage truck, we would have a Cummins engine in it, which would be same thing, service warranty repairs by the Cummins dealer. Mack would do the chassis, Labrie would do the body, and Allison would do the transmission. They all have, they're not like a typical General Motors passenger vehicle where it goes to GM for everything in the larger vehicles. Each of those components has their own dealer that would do that work. This is perfectly common across North American industry.
Okay, and I'm not familiar with the industry, so is this all? Is everyone fully aware of this? I guess is when we are looking at, do we buy product A or product B? Should this be part of the consideration? And if we are purchasing something that will force us really to go into non-competitive contracts for servicing, should the committee be aware of that at the time the contract is awarded?
Through Mr. Chair, I'm open to suggestions. I can't state enough. This is the norm in the heavier industry. If it wasn't Allison and we got a different transmission, you would be in the same case, and that's the same as the engine. This is the norm in this industry.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Filion. Other questions of staff on this item? Seeing none, speakers on this item? Councillor.
No, I just had those questions. I don't need to speak.
Filion, you held? Okay.
Yes,
okay. Would you like
I don't
to move the
need
recommendation?
to speak. I just wanted to ask that question.
On retain, all in favor? Carried.
So I don't want to move it, Mr. Chair. If someone else wants to move it, that's fine.
I'll move it, Chair. It's okay.
Okay. Councillor Holiday is moving it. All in favor? Carried. Our next item is number 23, amendment to non-competitive blanket contract number 470230068 with Bionuclear Diagnostics Incorporated for the supply and delivery of various personal protective equipment. Councillor Holiday, you held this item. Do you have questions of staff?
I did. I think they're fairly straightforward, Mr. Chair. I wonder if staff could elaborate a bit. It says here that this is an amendment to a contract, right? And I understand why for the equipment, but the overall contract is about $28 million. And I wondered if staff could just tell me a little bit about what that contract is for, how many years it is, how the value breaks out, just so I understand the bigger picture.
Sure. Through the speaker, Deputy Mayor Holiday, this was one of our emergency procurements we did in last year, and we reported on in September as part of our emergency COVID report. This is on this contract, we purchased approximately 27 million surgical masks and around 32 million nitrile medical gloves so that we could help respond to COVID through all the different divisions. So this contract has primarily helped us ensure that we have enough inventory to respond and make sure that the divisions are properly equipped with PPE. In this particular amendment report, the one area that we've been struggling with is isolation gowns. And we know that an isolation gown that meets our requirements can be purchased from Bionuclear, and that's why we're requesting this amendment.
And just to go back to that original number, so the original contract was about $28 million, and you said that it was for 27 million masks and 32 million gloves. Was there anything else in it?
No, that was all that was on this contract.
Okay, and that contract was previously reported, and it's also is it complete? Like, we've received all of the goods, and this is really just a little piece at the end here to get some gowns. You managed to find what you need, and so there's you're adding an increment to it.
Yes, we've received all our surgical masks and almost all of our gloves, and this is just a little bit of an additional amount for gowns so that we can ensure that we have enough supply as directed by the command table from with respect to how much inventory to have on hand in case things change again.
And have we used the vast majority of that inventory, or do we have like a warehouse with like 26 million of the 27 million masks? Just curious. Like, I realize that's really part of the pandemic response, but I'm just thinking about our material stores and that type of stuff.
Right. So we have them in our warehouse. We've our main warehouse in Etobicoke, and we actually have been able to leverage a warehouse from TTC to help put all the supplies. And as we as the pandemic continues and ideally gets better, we will be reviewing the situation on terms of how we can deal with the amount of product that we have.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chair. I have no further questions.
Thank you, Councillor Holiday. Other questions of the committee on this item? Seeing none, Councillor Holiday, did you want to move the recommendations on this item?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Councillor Holiday is moving the recommendations on item number 23. All in favor? That's carried. Our next item is number 26, procurement of emergency goods and services in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, August to December 2020, held by Councillor Holiday. Councillor Holiday, questions of staff?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Again, hopefully this is a straightforward question, much like my last one there. I noticed in here there is Lexan wall panels. It seemed to be listed twice for the Better Living Center. Maybe staff could explain why it's there 2 times, and it's about $1 million worth of Lexan panels, and I just wanted to know what that bought us.
Through the chair, I'll start, and Justin may fill in case I misspeak. But the Better Living Center was a pilot to build a new shelter there. It was an open area space, so they needed the Lexan panels so that they could properly have the site set up to support the individuals that were there. And I think if I recall correctly, it just required additional amount. There was an additional build, and then there was a further build out, but Justin could probably confirm if that's correct.
That is correct, Mike.
So through you to Mr. Pachalak, the report before us, this represents really things that have already been purchased and paid for and really completed. And this is part of your reporting process through the committee. But you're not asking to go buy the Lexan. You've already done that through the pandemic. Am I correct on that?
Yes, that's correct. This is just a report back on the emergency procurements that we did. Under the bylaw, we have to report back on anything over $500,000. But given the nature of the pandemic and for full transparency, we're actually reporting on anything that was related to COVID under the emergency provisions.
Okay. And if I wanted to look at things a different way, let's say I was interested in the Better Living Center and that project in itself, right, about all the things that you did, is there a way to look at all of this is only a piece of it, right? These are the exceptions that you had to do. If I wanted to figure that out, or I wanted to think about something else that you worked on that was mentioned in here, is there a way to inquire about, the 360-degree view of the things that were spent on that?
Well, for sure, you could always follow up with my office, and we can also connect with the right divisions in terms of the particular area. Obviously, a number of things were going on over the course of last year, but happy to connect with you on any questions you may have.
Okay, and just to circle back to my original question, were the panels purchased in 2 tranches? Is that why there's 2 line items?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you very much for answering my questions. Mr. Chair, I have none further. Okay,
thank you, Councillor Holiday. Does anybody else have questions of staff on this item? Seeing none, Councillor Holiday, would you like to move the recommendations on this item?
Fine, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Holiday. Councillor Holiday is moving the recommendations on item number 26. All in favor? That's carried. Our next item is GL 21.28, Jobs and Future Development, Board of Governors, Exhibition Place, Ward 10, which that should be, Ward 10, held by Councillor Holiday. Councillor Holiday, questions of staff on this item?
No questions.
Okay, speakers on this, other questions of staff on this item? Seeing none, speakers on this item?
Sure, Mr. Chair, I'll speak.
Councillor Holiday to speak.
Thanks. I'm going to move receipt on it.
Okay.
Just let the clerk put that up. perhaps I'll just, members understand what the motion is, so I don't need to wait for it to go on the screen. So this item, if you look through the pieces here, it's a transmittal from the Board of Governors requesting some further reporting. And my concern about where this is headed is to look at our relationship with our lessees. In relation to the fair wage policy, I have a lot of concerns with what our lessees are going through right now, coming through COVID and coming out of COVID. And many of our lessees are not necessarily eligible for things like some of the government supports that were provided to people that had leases out in private buildings. And so this represents a line of reporting that would add another layer on top of the things that they need to worry about to continue to have their businesses run. And I think that the timing is not right for this, and it should be looked at another time.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Holiday. Questions of the mover? So, Councillor Holiday, I just had one. From my reading of the report, the Board of Governors of the CNE has asked for further work to be done, and what your motion's doing is receiving it and would put a halt to that work that they're requesting. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think the work that they're asking, though, is very broad in nature, and it's asking the real estate folks to look at leases all across the city. I think it's what they're asking is beyond what's within their specific purview. I understand that they're entitled to do that, but they are very, very broad recommendations. And perhaps, if a member wanted to advance these for whatever reason, they would bring that through a member's motion to whatever committee that they wanted to. And so my concern, as I said in my speaking, is that, there's a lot of people that lease premises from the city. I know I've heard from them, not in the context of this committee item, but just on other discussions about what they're going through. And I'm worried about the signals that the city sends as we're working our way through COVID, and then starting to think about those lease agreements and other layers of requirements that could be inserted within them.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Councillor Holiday. Councillor Matlow, questions of the mover? Sorry, Councillor Matlow, I thought I saw your hand.
Oh, no, I'd like to speak and move something.
Oh, okay. Okay, all right. Thank you, Councillor Matlow. Seeing no other questions of Councillor Holiday, Councillor Matlow to speak.
So I'll move the recommendations. I can't think of many subjects that are more reasonable to consider than job stability and fair wages throughout the pandemic. And as you'll see, the recommendation is for a report. So rather than being so concerned, respectfully, with signals, I think that we should allow for this report to be written, and then decisions can be made based on recommendations and due process.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Matlow. Other questions? Sorry, other speakers on this item? Seeing none, and I'm gonna, I'm gonna speak in the same vein as Councillor Matlow just did. This was brought to us by the Board of Governors of Exhibition Place. They have some concerns. I think we need to continue to look at the quality of everyone's jobs that are in a facility that's being leased from the City of Toronto, whether it's at Exhibition Place or anywhere else in the City of Toronto. I think it's a report that's appropriate and needs to be done, and I will be supporting the recommendations that are before us. Thank you. So we have, other speakers on this item? Seeing none. So, Matthew?
Yes.
We have, So that would go first.
My apologies, Mr. Chair, you're breaking up, but just to clarify, we would vote on the order the motions were placed. So we would vote on the Councillor Holiday's motion to receive the item first, and then we'll proceed after that.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion. We're going to vote on first by Councillor Holiday to receive this item. All in favor?
Mr. Chair, could we record that vote, please?
Sure.
And the following one.
Yep. So we have a motion to receive this item. All in favor?
Okay, all in favor, Councillor Holiday's motion to receive. Councillor Holiday? Any opposed?
And
Councillor Matlow? Councillor Fillion, Councillor Nunziata, Chair Ainsley, I'm sorry, your camera's off. How do you vote?
Sorry, opposed?
Opposed, thank you. Mr. Chair, that is 4-1, and that motion to receive loses.
Okay, and then the recommendations before us, all in favor?
And again, a recorded vote, all in favor. Chair Ainsley, Councillor Matlow, Councillor Fillion, Councillor Nunziata, all opposed? Councillor Holiday. Mr. Chair, that carries. The item carries 4-1.
Okay, thank you, Matthew. And then we will go back to item number. Sorry, Matthew. I was going to say we're going back to item number 15, response to GL 20.6, licensing and enforcement of eating establishments. It was originally held by Councillor Fillion. Councillor Fillion has made a request to go in camera. Matthew, could I get a motion on the screen that we can put forward?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, we're just going to put the motion up on the screen. Just give us 1 sec.
Yep, no rush. So I'm moving the following motion that the General Government Licensing Committee meet in closed session to consider the following: GL 21.15, response to GL 20.6, licensing and enforcement of eating establishments in all wards. The reason for the going in camera or confidentiality is litigation or potential litigation, information subject to solicitor and client privilege. All in favor of the motion? That carries unanimously by the members present. So just to members of the public, the General Government Licensing Committee is going into what we call in camera. So you won't be able to see this portion of the meeting. And I am going to ask the city clerk, Matthew Green, to make sure only the appropriate city staff are online for this portion. I believe you're going to put them in a waiting room, Matthew. And when we're done with our what are called our in-camera deliberations, the committee will come back into public to finish the balance of the meeting. So I believe, Matthew, I'm going to give you a few minutes to make that happen.
Yes, and we'll let you know when we're ready to go. May I just say to everyone who's on the call, if you are not required to be in closed session to answer questions or to participate for item GL 21.15, you can please disconnect yourself from the call. We don't have a full list of staff who are required to be here. Can you please help the clerk by removing yourself from the meeting unless you're absolutely required to be here?
Yes.
I just wanted to say to you that my office has been running a pilot project on Teams, Microsoft Teams. You'll really like it.
I look forward to learning the results of what your office is doing, and I hope that your office can report to the rest of council and lead us.
I'm quite happy with Microsoft Teams. It's very seamless. My staff all have their own folders that I can, gauge what project they're working on or what documents they're working on.
Just going rogue? Have you just gone rogue?
I was the pilot project.
He's a pilot.
I'm very interested in that too, Paul, whenever you can fill us in.
Yeah.
We will come to talk to you guys.
Mr. Chair? Mr. Chair?
Okay.
Yes.
We are back. We're streaming again, and we'll need to move a motion to extend the meeting.
Okay, thank you, Matthew. I will move a motion to extend the meeting to complete the agenda. All in favor? Carried. Councillor Filion, did you have questions?
Yeah, just a few more questions kind of around the coordination between various departments. So I guess first question of public health is if an inspector is required to fill out on the inspection form the business license and finds that there is no business license, is there a procedure in place whereby they report that to municipal licensing and standards?
Yeah, thank you. Through Mr. Chair to Councillor, yes, that is the appropriate action that is to be taken by the inspector. So when they do come across a business that does not have a current or is missing, is not currently posting their license, then they are to make that referral to municipal licensing and standards, advising them that they've identified this possible location as not having a business license.
Thank you. And a question of the building department. I'm assuming it isn't part of your protocol to follow up whether somebody who is opening a restaurant and needs a building permit is applying for a license, or even to tell people that they need a license. Would that be correct?
Through the chair, yes, you are correct, Councillor Filion.
And would it be somewhat simple to, how difficult would it be, let me ask it that way, to do two things? One is just automatically notify the person who's doing the renovations that they will need a license to operate a restaurant, and to notify municipal licensing that someone has just renovated a facility to open a restaurant?
Through the chair, I think that's a fairly simple process. One of the things Carlton was alluding to earlier when he was talking, I think there's an opportunity for Toronto Building, Municipal Licensing and Standards, and others to work together to come up with a standard operating practice so all of these things are done. I don't think that's a difficult piece to do. It'll just require some effort on our part to put those processes in place and ideally set them up so that it can be handled electronically through our systems. Usually that's what takes time.
Yes, no, thank you. And then a question of Carlton, I guess. What would it cost? I'm not sure how business licenses work, how the amount is determined. Is it based on the size of the restaurant, if we're talking about restaurants, or is it, how does that work? What would a restaurant typically pay, and do they all pay the same amount for a license?
So thank you for the question. They all pay the same amount regardless of their size. For a new restaurant, for first time business license, I believe it's around $550, and it's the subsequent years renewals around I want to say between $350 and $380.
And when we find that someone has not applied for a business license, are we able to not only fine them and or charge them, but are we able to go back and require them to pay any outstanding business license fees?
I'm not aware of being able to back charge. Corey may have more information on that. I'm not sure if it's a practice of the city or something that we have the authority to do.
So I guess the question would be of legal then, do we have the authority to do it?
Yeah, Corey's here.
Yeah, I don't believe we do. That's not something I've thought about before, but having not received the service, the fee follows the service. So if you don't have a building permit, I don't believe we can charge that fee.
Yeah, sorry, and you were cutting out a bit, Corey, but maybe you could just look into that a bit and just send me an email or whatever, get back to me offline on whether or not we have the ability to do that. And those are all my questions. Mr. Chair, if you could put me down to speak, I do have a motion.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Filion. Other questions of this item by members? Councillor Nunziata.
To Carlton. So if somebody has a business license and they haven't renewed and they're late in renewal and then they reapply, they have to go through the whole process of a police check and all the necessary documentation before you issue them a new license?
That's correct. And I think you and I had one of these examples this year. And there's been a few of them where renewals have been challenging with the pandemic and people not necessarily getting their mail, being opened and closed. We do try to work with them, but when it's been 6 and 9 months, it has to be a new application. We do try where we can, if we have documents, police checks, other documents that we've had in the last year or so, we do try to reuse those versus having to go all the way back to scratch. So it is something that we've worked through on a number of occasions during the pandemic, with restaurants in particular.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nunziata. Other questioners on this item? Seeing none, we'll go to speakers. Councillor Filion, you indicated you'd like to speak.
Yes, thanks. And I have a motion, if clerks can put it up on the screen. I can read it out while they're doing that the committee requests the Executive Director of Municipal Licensing and Standards in consultation with the Chief Building Official and other appropriate staff to report back to the committee in the second quarter of 2021 on A, mechanisms to ensure coordination between departments to flag instances where businesses are operating without licenses, and B, mechanisms to increase penalties and enforcement, particularly in cases where public health or safety may be at risk. On the last point, I'm especially concerned about restaurants that might be operating, below the radar and not getting any inspections, and that certainly is concerning. I think that, we've had a recent incident that has pointed out that we could do a better job coordinating between the various departments, and it sounds like that is, very doable, and, that we should be able to, going forward, do a better job with this. Just looking for a report back that states all of the ways that we are changing processes in order to do that. And I think we also need to be a little bit less nice to people who obviously know better. I certainly understand that there would be some people who would be new to the restaurant industry, new to the country, perhaps, you know, and a lot of our, you know, new entrepreneurs in the food industry might fall into those categories. But, and certainly I'm all for cutting someone some slack who makes an honest mistake. But, you know, what I'm concerned about is people who make deliberate choices not to get a business license and figure out what the heck, the worst that's going to happen is somebody's going to come along and tell me I need to get one. You know, that is not, you know, properly enforcing our rules and our bylaws through which we protect the public. So, you know, I think where somebody clearly knew better and chose not to get a license to avoid the rigmarole or avoid the fees, whatever the reasons, you know, in order to be below the radar screen and not get inspected, whatever the reasons, we, you know, need to, you know, be a lot stronger with our enforcement. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Filion. Other questions, or sorry, other speakers on this item? Councillor Matlow.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Operating a restaurant without a license puts the public's health and safety at risk. Operating a restaurant without a license puts the public's health and safety at risk. Yes, it is critically important that business owners are respectful of all necessary laws and bylaws in the midst of a pandemic, as the vast majority have been, to protect the public's health with respect to COVID-19 and the threat of it. And many have made sacrifices. And there have been reasonable questions even about some of the policies that have been enacted. But it's not just about COVID-19. It's about public health's ability to inspect and to ensure that what people are eating are not going to make them ill. So I completely support Councillor Filion's motion. It puts more of an emphasis on ensuring that when we say we mean it, we really mean it. And if somebody decides to ignore the policy, then there are consequences that might incent them to do the right thing if they don't want to do it altruistically. We hear, as I've mentioned before, I think all of us know this inherently, there are many bylaws that have a dearth of enforcement. They have a dearth of tools, a dearth of just the ability to really back up what we say. And then it kind of makes one question, like, why are they on the books in the first place if they don't have any teeth? So for all those reasons, I support this motion. I think it's really important to do. And I hope it sends a very clear message to both those individuals who are acting like scofflaws, that the city is becoming very serious and intent on backing up its own bylaws and standards, health and safety standards, but to the public at large, that the City of Toronto will do everything it takes and everything necessary to support your health, safety, and well-being. That is our, there is no greater priority to the City of Toronto than that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Matlow. Other speakers on this item? Seeing none, so I'm just make the closing remarks. I want to thank staff for their work on this. The report on this, I originally brought this forward as a letter asking for information. I'm glad that staff are endeavoring to put better processes in place so that we can deal with items like this. I do appreciate that staff have said that this is a small number of the overall eating establishments and businesses that they deal with in the city of Toronto. But I still think that we expect, and I know I think all the members on this committee and council expect that we have seamless processes in place in 2021, that by and large those systems are encapsulated in an electronic process, and it's not a paper trail where things seem to be missed. I often get comments from residents about the city works in silos. And I always say, no, it's not possible. This is 2021. There's no silos, but obviously there are silos. And I think that Councillor Fillion's motion goes, is the appropriate thing to move forward with, so that we have an idea that all of the issues that have been discussed today are closed. Because I think as we move forward, restaurants in particular, I think people want to know that they're going to a restaurant, it has a business license, it properly, they applied for a building permit, it was built properly, the health department knows it's there, and it's inspected on a regular basis, it has a legitimate business license. I know that it was commented on by staff that establishments are required to post a business license. I go into a restaurant, you see the license on the wall. I don't think I ever spend the time to look and make sure that it's a valid business license. You just assume that the license on the wall is valid and that everything has been done properly. I think that what we've seen today is there are gaps that need to be closed, and I look forward to the next report from staff on this. Thank you. So we do have one amendment to the report before us from Councillor Fillion. Do you need that on the screen, Councillor Fillion? Or sorry, Matthew, it's going up. Okay. Okay, we have the motion on the screen from Councillor Fillion. Everybody, all in favor? Opposed? That carries unanimously by the members present. All in favor of the item as amended? That carries unanimously by the members present. I think that was our last item of business, Matthew.
That's correct, Mr. Chair. We do have a confirming bill for the for item GL 21.1 earlier.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll just put that up on the screen shortly.
Okay. Okay, I will move the General Government Licensing Committee pass and declare as a bylaw a confirmatory bill to confirm the legislative proceedings of the General Government Licensing Committee acting under delegated authority at meeting number 21 held on March 29th, 2021. All in favor? That carries unanimously of the members present. And I think that's it, Matthew.
Yes, Mr. Chair, you've completed your business.
Okay, motion to adjourn by Councillor Nunziata. All in favor? And that carries. Thank you, everybody. Everybody stay safe and well, and take care of yourself and your families. Thank you.